Welcome to the next video of Animation Universal. Today, I'll tell you about one of the most bizarre and horrifying epidemics of the 16th century, a disease where the afflicted would dance uncontrollably until they died. Before we start, make sure you've subscribed to the channel so you don't miss any interesting and informative videos. Also, don't forget to leave a comment, like, and share to support us. Now let's dive into the story. The Dancing Plague. At the beginning of the 16th century, a strange epidemic called the Dancing Plague broke out in Strasbourg, northeastern France. Without music or joy, around 400 people danced day and night non-stop for nearly a month. Some collapsed or even died from heart attacks, strokes, or exhaustion. When we think of epidemics, we often associate them with terrifying diseases that have claimed countless lives throughout history. However, there are some outbreaks that are not only frightening but also incredibly mysterious, with causes still unexplained to this day. The tragedy that occurred in July 1518 in Strasbourg is a prime example. In the summer of July 1518, the residents of Strasbourg, located in the Alsace region, then part of the Holy Roman Empire, were astounded and bewildered when they witnessed a woman named Frau Troffea. She was carrying her nursing infant as she walked to Corbeau Bridge and threw the baby into the river. She had no milk left to nurse the child and could no longer care for it. After returning home, she stepped out onto the street and began dancing non-stop. There was no music and no expression on her face, yet she danced as if surrounded by an orchestra. Remarkably, Troffea danced continuously day and night without showing signs of fatigue. By the second and third days, her bizarre behavior persisted. She continued dancing with blank, wide-eyed stares. Even though her feet became calloused and bloodied and her body was bruised from falls, she wouldn't stop. On the sixth day, the dance only ended when she collapsed from exhaustion and died. At first, people thought she was mentally ill or possessed by a demon, leading to her strange actions. Village elders concluded that Troffea was either insane or cursed by some evil force. However, shortly after Troffea's death, her neighbor began exhibiting the same symptoms. The epidemic spreads and escalates. Within a week, more than 30 people were dancing non-stop, day and night, across the streets of the city. According to historic mysteries, physicians and officials were only summoned after some of the dancers died from heart attacks, exhaustion, or strokes. At first, no one could understand why this was happening. At the time, the authorities believed that the cure for the dancing plague was to let people dance even more to release their pent-up emotions. As a result, they constructed wooden stages for the public to perform on. They even expanded the dancing spaces and brought in dozens of professional musicians to encourage the participants to dance day and night. However, it seems the authorities were gravely mistaken. Instead of containing the epidemic, their actions caused it to spread even further, leading to more deaths from heart attacks and exhaustion. Reports indicate that the plague claimed the lives of approximately 15 people per day, with the peak reaching as many as 30 deaths in a single day. The situation grew increasingly bizarre and dire. In a short time, at least 400 citizens of Strasbourg, including men, women, and children, were caught up in this strange phenomenon. Just like the earlier cases, they danced uncontrollably until they died. According to medical records of the time, victims succumbed to heart failure and extreme exhaustion. Survivors who had not yet died were transported to a shrine in the Vosges Mountains to pray. There, they were required to walk around the altar wearing red shoes. A few weeks later, the epidemic began to subside. Some patients regained their senses and returned to normal life. By September 1518, the dancing plague had nearly disappeared. This strange epidemic, which might seem like mere legend, was entirely real and is documented in the history of the 16th century. And the dancing plague occurred in many places. Strasbourg was not the only location to experience this bizarre epidemic. Reports suggest that similar phenomena also occurred in Switzerland, Germany, and the Netherlands. Historian John Waller, author of A Time to Dance, A Time to Die, The Extraordinary Story of the Dancing Plague of 1518, studied this peculiar event for many years. On Christmas Eve in 1027, 18 peasants attending a Christmas Mass in Bernburg, Germany, began to display symptoms of the plague, dancing and screaming uncontrollably. As a result, 4 of them died, while the rest were left exhausted, trembling, and experiencing seizures. In 1237, more than 100 children in Erfurt, Germany, were struck by the dancing plague, taking to the streets and dancing uncontrollably until they collapsed. Many of the children died, and those who survived suffered from permanent tremors. In June 1278, the dancing plague broke out in the town of Utrecht, Netherlands, where 200 people began dancing frantically on the Mosel Bridge. The structure collapsed under their weight, plunging all 200 people into the river, where they were swept away by the water. After a period of dormancy, the plague re-emerged in 1374 in Aix-la-Chapelle, Germany. Victims joined hands and danced for hours in a wild frenzy, eventually collapsing from exhaustion, groaning in pain. Many of them suffered complications such as blindness, hallucinations, and convulsions, crying out names of strong alcoholic drinks or religious figures. A few months after the Aix-la-Chapelle incident, the dancing plague appeared again in Cologne, Germany, with over 500 people affected. Around the same time, Metz, France, saw nearly 1,100 people afflicted, many of whom died. According to Chambers' Edinburgh Journal, a British medical publication, the dancing plague may have been a consequence of the Black Plague, which triggered widespread religious, social, and economic upheavals. This epidemic left a profound impact on European history, and it took 150 years for the population to recover from its effects. Records related to the dancing plague. John Waller documented the deaths caused by the dancing plague through various historical sources, such as physicians' notes, church sermons, local and regional chronicles, and records from the Strasbourg City Council. In his work, he vividly described the horrifying scenes. According to his accounts, many women, men, and children danced frantically while crying out for help, begging for relief as they were unable to stop themselves. He wrote, "Their eyes were vacant, their faces turned to the heavens, and their hands and feet moved in spasmodic, exhausted rhythms. Their clothes and dresses were drenched in sweat, clinging to their emaciated, lifeless bodies." In a radio program by France Culture, writer Jean Toul, while gathering materials for his novel Entrer dans la danse, translated as Join the Dance, published in March 2018, remarked on how bizarre this phenomenon was. It even inspired English playwright William Shakespeare to reference it as the dancing plague. While it may sound like an ancient folktale, the dancing plague of 1518 is well documented in medical, civil, and religious texts. Furthermore, it was not confined to Strasbourg. Similar events occurred in Switzerland, Germany, and the Netherlands. What could possibly explain such spontaneous, frenzied dancing to the point of death? Theories propose to explain this strange phenomenon. Many theories have been proposed to explain this event. At first glance, the tragedy might resemble a folktale meant to scare children. Theoretically, Frau Troffea and the other frenzied dancers should have died from dehydration after prolonged physical activity. According to doctors, the human body can only endure such exertion for up to 3 days. Yet ancient records insist that the victims dance continuously for days without eating or drinking. Even today's top endurance athletes would find such a feat impossible. Despite this, researchers have proposed numerous theories to explain the mysterious plague. The majority suggests that Troffea and the victims suffered from a neurological condition triggered by extreme stress, which subsequently affected the community. However, the causes of this stress vary across different explanations. The first theory posits that Troffea and the others danced themselves to death due to the dire poverty they faced. At the time, Strasbourg was struggling with a severe famine. Consequently, many may have been under immense stress, leading to illness. However, this theory is flawed, as historical descriptions consistently depict the victims as healthy individuals with no signs of seizures, weakness, or malnutrition. The second theory suggests that the victims were poisoned. Specifically, they may have consumed ergot-infected rye, which can cause symptoms resembling uncontrollable dancing due to muscle spasms. However, if this were true, the victims would likely have died much sooner, as ergot is highly toxic and can be fatal when ingested. The third theory, proposed by Professor John Waller of Michigan State University, attributes the phenomenon to mass psychogenic illness fueled by superstition. The victims were predominantly impoverished and starving individuals with no one to turn to except their faith. Overwhelmed by fear and despair, they may have danced in hopes of divine intervention until their death. Even after more than 5 centuries, no definitive explanation has been found for the dancing plague of 1518. It remains one of the greatest mysteries of the 16th century. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to avoid missing any interesting and educational content. Thank you so much, and goodbye for now. See you next time.